Have you ever walked into a room with something important to say, but fear held your voice hostage? Maybe you were the only one with a different perspective. Maybe the stakes were high. Maybe you knew that saying the truth could shift everything. So you chose to say nothing at all. Listen, this is the Best in the Class series with Adrian Benton and Transformation Station. Let's get into it. Hello there. Welcome to Transformation Station Leadership Podcast, the show where we deep dive into the mindset, strategies, and inner evolution of high impact leadership. I'm your host, Adrian Benton, and today we're talking about something that quietly shapes every decision you and I make as leaders: our courage. And in this best in class episode, Resilience in the Room, Holding Your Ground Without Burning Bridges, we talk about the real stuff, like the kinds of leadership growth that doesn't just look good, but transforms how you lead from the inside out. Welcome to the Best in the Class series. And if you're ready for real talk on what it takes to lead with excellence, not just optics, guess what? You're in the right place. So let's get started. Today, I'm super excited because I have an amazing guest who I am quite sure will drop some serious leadership gems. So make sure you have your note-taking devices or your journal so that you can take notes, and also be sure to engage. If you're watching this on video on YouTube or Facebook, be sure to write in the comment section. Let us know your reflections. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, then go ahead and send me an email or DM me with your reflections, and I'll be sure to share them live on a future podcast. Today, we have Dr. Dawn J. Douglas, who is a nationally recognized safety and occupational health leader with over 2 decades of distinguished service in the U.S. Department of Defense. Currently serving as the Region Safety Program Director for Europe, Africa, and Central Command. She holds a PhD in Christian leadership, a master's in education, and a bachelor of arts, and is a certified safety professional and certified instructional trainer. Beyond her leadership in government, Dr. Douglas is a passionate author and the voice behind the Radiant Love podcast, where she explores themes of spiritual resilience, identity, and divine purpose. Her books include Not Beyond Repair, Radiant Love, The Eternal Romance of God and the Waiting Heart, Praying the Psalms, Strength for the Struggle, and A Love Story Written in Blood. Each of her works blends biblical insight with real life encouragement for people navigating adversity with faith and integrity. I can tell you from experience that she is a powerful voice for anyone looking to rewrite the rules, live life on purpose, own their own worth, and just be excellent. So let's go ahead and welcome right now to the Transformation Station community. Welcome, Dawn Douglas.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure to be here with you, Adrian, and to just share this space with you. This is just an amazing opportunity, and I'm so humbled, but I'm excited to get into this conversation.
Likewise. Well, listen, today we're talking about holding your ground without burning bridges. And we're talking to leaders. In the Best in the Class series, Dawn, we are talking about topics that often leadership doesn't really focus on, but they're real, they're true, and relevant. So I have no doubt that this conversation is going to resonate with many. As we look at holding your ground without burning bridges, I was doing a little bit of research, right? And this is what I found. To hold your ground as a leader without burning bridges focuses on clear communication, assertive behavior, and maintaining professionalism. This involves setting boundaries, delivering on promises, and fostering a culture of respect and understanding. That is a whole mouthful right there, because that is the essence in many ways of leadership. Culture of respect and understanding. Whew. Delivering on promises. Setting boundaries, clear communication, assertive. Like this is class 101 for leaders. Yet, Dawn, there are many reasons why leaders sometimes struggle to hold their own ground at work. We're talking about at work. We're not talking about at home and the community. This is for leaders who are struggling with holding their ground at work. Well, I'm going to share with you just like 2 or 3 of the reasons. All right. You ready, Dawn?
Yeah,
Here we go.
I'm ready.
And those of you who are watching, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, when I say these reasons, if you resonated, I want to invite you to put a 1 in the comment section. Go ahead and put a 1. And those of you who are listening on audio, just go ahead and write the 1, or better yet, just raise your hand. Raise your hand, okay? So here is reason number 1, fear of conflict. We're told, listen, I know many leaders, they say, are wired to keep the peace. They worry about standing firm, that standing firm might cause tension, damage relationships in the workplace, or trigger confrontation. Mercy. And yet the truth is that avoiding conflict often creates quiet dysfunction. Lord have mercy. I have experienced that over the years, not saying a word, and it doesn't get better. It creates a quiet dysfunction because now people are avoiding and resentments build. Number 2, a desire to be liked. Oh, Lord have mercy. Leaders, especially emerging ones, right? You're new. They want to create harmony, and they equate harmony with effectiveness. It's like we have this internal need for approval, which can override courage. The courage to challenge the norms or the courage to make unpopular decisions. What do you think about that one, Don?
Yeah, I resonate with both of them. Through the course of my experience, I've been a new leader, and I want the approval, especially in my career field where I'm surrounded by men. So there's a layer to that where you also have, the dynamics of the sexes within the workplace, the dynamic of racial, differences, cultural differences. And so all of those things create some layers to wanting to be liked, wanting to be approved of, wanting people to accept you, wanting people to hear your voice. So 100% I agree.
Absolutely. Another reason is power dynamics in a hierarchical or politically sensitive organization. Holding your own ground can feel risky, especially when you fear that your opinions are going to be challenged by senior leaders or be challenged by tradition. Have mercy. I can relate. And then I'll give one more. Burnout or emotional exhaustion can sometimes keep leaders from holding their ground. When a leader is depleted, it's harder to access courage when you feel like you have nothing to give. Why? Because it takes energy to advocate appropriately with strength and with grace. And exhaustion many times will cause us to retreat or to feel safe in that moment. So Dawn, I want to ask you this question. What does it really mean to hold your ground as a leader, and especially in spaces where a leader may feel outnumbered, like you're the only woman in the room, the only minority in the room, the only one with a certain certification, or the only one with certain number of years of experience? What does it really mean for a leader to hold their ground, especially in spaces where they feel outnumbered, underestimated, or unheard?
Adrienne, that's such a great question. All of these things that you've been talking about, I think that a number of us that are listening, we are raising our hands saying, that's me, that's been me, I've been there and done that. I look at it because I'm a safety professional and because this has been my career for a number of years. I like to draw analogies from my profession. And so when I think about a leader holding their ground, it makes me instantly think about erecting a building. And a lot of times, if you've never seen a building constructed, you only see the building itself, and the building seems to be standing there and it's sturdy and it's stable. But if you have seen the building being constructed from the ground up, you know that without that digging deep, deep, deep into the unseen areas where the foundation is laid, you know that you have to do your deep work, that deep foundational work, if you're going to be a building or be a person that stands in those difficult times. And that work is normally done in the unseen. That work is done over years of time. And it's a shape. It's reinforced by both effective leaders and mentors. And unfortunately, it's enforced and reinforced by ineffective leaders that have put you in positions where you've been embarrassed, where your voice has been stifled, and you've had to learn how to regulate your emotional response. So each time that happens, you add something to your framework. You either strengthen your resiliency or you pull something out, because the various trials that you go through, I've had to dig deep below the surface, and some stuff just didn't belong there. And when I go on construction sites, I see a lot of the materials that are used to create the building. And what people don't see with the finished product is how much trash is around a construction site, because they've got to pull up old foundational things. They've got to dig out dirt. They've got to remove a bunch of things. And so getting rooted and grounded means sometimes clearing out the trash. So failures, you have lessons that have to be, the results of those things have to be removed. The memory of those failures and the memory of those triggering events where you've been humiliated in front of people. You can't walk into the room with those things and wear those things. You got to get that trash out. You got to remove those things, and so in order for the foundation to be strong and endure. And if I'm being honest, there are times when my building has completely collapsed. I thought I was pretty strong, and then I went up against a circumstance or a situation that I'd never been in before, and I found that I just wasn't as resilient and strong as I thought I was. So I've had to tear the whole building down and start all over again. But with that, you get grounded. And so as a leader, I think that staying anchored to your foundation and making sure your foundation is strong and solid, making sure that you're building on a rock, just like the scripture says. And for me, that rock is Jesus. So my faith and my convictions and my character. It's so easy to stand when everybody agrees with you, when everybody's applauding you, and everybody, especially when you're a young leader and there's lots and lots of encouragement. But when you're the only voice in the room, that's when real steadfast is revealed. And when you're dismissed, and that's hard. When you are minimized and dismissed, especially as a person of color, where we struggle to be seen anyway, especially as a woman, where we struggle to be heard anyway, it often comes where we have to have intestinal fortitude, where we have to stand. So you have to lay your ego, that has to be laid out with the trash of that building that you're building. So I remind myself that strength doesn't come from what's seen above ground. I have to constantly remind myself that what holds me is deep. It has depth. So being spiritually and morally grounded gives you courage to remain unshaken. And not because you're rigid, and not because, you think that I'm so powerful. It's just because you're rooted. And when you're rooted, you don't chase after consensus. Like, the older I get and the more experience I have, like, I am unbothered and unmoved whether or not you agree with me or not. And because I'm not, I don't have to come in with defensiveness. So I'm built for endurance. And when the pressure comes, I don't move, because my foundation, it really holds. And so I always think of that song. I don't know if you remember it, but that song that says your anchor holds and grips the sun. That rock is Jesus. And so when I go into those spaces now where I feel outnumbered and I feel underestimated and I feel unheard, I know that Jesus is with me, which means I'm never really outnumbered. And I know that his wisdom guides me, which is the source of my confidence. And I know that he hears me. Even when I'm praying silently and internally, I know he hears me. So I don't have to feel intimidated. So with that knowledge, I can step into a room grounded in something more stable than the opinions of other people. Because today they may agree with me, but tomorrow they may not. Today I might be on their side, and tomorrow I might be on the other side of the aisle. But regardless of what the position is, I'm still rooted and grounded.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And you caused me to think about this. As you know, throughout my own journey, I've had to realize that holding my ground, many times it simply means standing in my clarity, even when the room was full of noise. At one of my previous duty stations, we noticed that, as chaplains, people always come in with drama and chaos and everything. And people would come into our office with chaos, and all of a sudden, the air in the room, in the office space, was chaotic. And one day we said, like, this is crazy, because the person will leave and we're still operating in chaos because chaos is in the air. And so we developed this mantra that was just like, that just said, don't jump into their chaos. And literally somebody would come in chaotic and we would look at each other, don't jump in, don't jump in. And we were able to stay and stand in our peace, even though the elements around us was chaotic. And so to the leaders watching today, as we engage in this conversation, we want to remind you, holding your ground. Stand in your clarity, stand in your value system, stand in your truth, stand in the role in which you have been hired to operate in. Don't shrink back, don't shift just to make other people comfortable. Even if you're outnumbered, even if you're being underestimated, even if you are being unheard, don't go silent, but stay centered. You heard Dawn talk about her faith. That rock, which is in Christ Jesus. What centers you? What holds you? What grounds you? That is what is needed in order for you to be able to hold your ground. And one other truth before we move on to our next question, one other truth that I had to realize is that leadership is not about being the loudest in the room. Oh my goodness. Leadership is not about being the loudest in the room. It's about being the clearest. Dawn, when I hear people getting really loud, I step back now. Before I used to listen so I could figure out how to respond. Now I just step back and watch. And I'm listening to hear what is it that they're really saying. Not what they're saying. What message are they really saying? And I want to respond and not react. Which then leads me to this question for you, Dawn. How can leaders distinguish between being reactive and being resilient when navigating conflict or resilience?
Well, I love, don't let the chaos of others cause you to, react chaotically and standing in your peace. I love that. Because for me, I think the difference is where your strength is sourced, where does your strength come from? And so, that reactivity, when you're reacting something, it's emotionally driven, like fear, ego, wounded pride. When you're reacting, it's urgent. Like, I've got to defend myself. I got to get my stance together. It's almost like boxing. I've got to protect myself and I've got to get my defenses up. And so you want to clap back. You want to protect your image. You want to assert control. And so I love what you say about not being the loudest in the room, because normally the person who's reacting is loud. They want to assert their dominance and control, but it's usually very, very short-sighted and self-centered. And you offer, when you're younger, when you get to clap back and you get to say that smart thing you really want to say, you forfeit a long-term gain for short-term satisfaction. And so you can't take those reactive words back. And that's what I've learned over the course of my life is that once those words have been released from my mouth, they're out there and they are making an impact that I may not have intended. But because I did not stop, once I spoke, it was out there. And so reactivity is that impulsive thing to speak before really listening. So I like how you said, when people get loud, you get quiet. And that I've had to learn to do that, because I've often been, because I'm energetic, because, I rah, 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 I can be the loudest person in the room. But when it comes to making decisions about things, I know that I have to use discernment and I have to seek to understand before I seek to dominate.
Say
And
that again.
I felt that rise in me during like those high pressure moments, especially when I'm in a command briefing and all of the senior leadership is there, or the meeting gets very, very contentious because I'm in the compliance field and not everybody wants to comply. And so where the instinct is to scream or to fire back or to get with somebody who's trying to trigger me, I've learned that sometimes, through embarrassment, unfortunately, I've learned that reactivity may win in a moment, but you really do lose the mission. Resilience, on the other hand, flows from a deeper well. So that's why I say you have to recognize, where is your strength source? That well has discernment, it has patience, and really it has the long-term game mindset. It's strength under control. And that's what I love about humility. I think humility recognizes that I have power, so I don't have to prove that I have power. It's strength under control. It's resilience. Being resilient means you choose not to be provoked by pressure, but instead pause. And for me, I pause, I pray, and I prepare. I'm super strategic about how I approach things, especially since my position requires me to be in a room with, decision makers that are making life and death decisions. So I don't think resilience is passive at all. And sometimes people think if I'm being silent, I'm being passive. Absolutely not. Resilience is deeply active, but in a way that's really, really strategic, and it's sustainable, and it submits itself to a higher purpose. So resiliency, reactivity, it demands to be heard, but resiliency waits to be effective. I think reactivity wants to seek control and dominate, and then resiliency walks in authority. So
I love that. I absolutely love that, And so for my leaders who are listening and watching right now, I want to give you a moment to take a moment and write some notes. What are your reflections right now in terms of not just what you're hearing as it pertains to somebody else, but for you and your leadership? What are the ways in which you're being called right now to reset, to revive, to renew, to re-engage with your own ability to hold your ground with resilience? Don shared quite a few great things. And as you were talking, Don, I thought about a Transformation Station quote that we have here. And that quote from Transformation Station says, "Reactive leaders protect their ego. Resilient leaders protect the relationship."
I love that. I'm going to take that. I need that. I love that.
Yes. It's about choosing presence over panic, even when the conversation is hard. Sit with that to our listeners. How can you choose presence over panic, even when the conversation that you need to have with a coworker, someone you're supervising, or maybe you're the junior and it's someone who's supervising you? How can you choose presence? You're present in the room, you're present in the conversation, you're looking the person in the eye, you allow them to know that you're engaged, even when the conversation is difficult. Because as Don alluded to, resilience is response with intention. A lot of times people think resilience is just sitting back and doing nothing. No, that pause, that quiet, that peace that you usher in, that just, sitting still so that clarity can come in. That's a response, an intentional response, because you're making a decision. So to our leaders, ask yourself this question when you find yourself in pressure-filled situations. Am I reacting to be right, or am I responding to be effective? Reaction deals with feelings, responding deals with thought. Just gonna sit with that for a moment.
Yeah, that's powerful.
So, Dawn, can you share with us a time when you had to speak up or disagree in a high stakes setting? And how did you stay grounded without damaging the relationship? For those of you who are listening and watching, great time to take out your notes again, because Dawn is going to sow some teachable gems and some practical wisdom with us that you definitely want to take note of. So, Dawn, can you share with us a time where you had to speak up or disagree in a high stakes environment? And how did you stay grounded without damaging the relationship?
Well, unfortunately, as a safety professional, my primary job is to ensure compliance, and compliance isn't always convenient, which can make people very angry, very upset. So I remember a time during a regional safety review when a senior leader proposed a course of action that would have put us out of alignment with our established policy and potentially put us at risk, not just legally, but operationally. And the room was really, really tense, right? Because a lot of times in these high stakes meetings, people want to do the most expeditious thing. We want to respond and react to solve the problem, but that might not necessarily comply with the rules. And I could tell that other people in the room, they were just not willing to challenge or speak up. They didn't want to, seem as though they were challenging the leader. But, I had to speak up because that is my job as the compliance person. So what helped me stay grounded was remembering the bigger goal. And I tell my employees and junior leaders always, just from my perspective as a safety professional, because we get a bad reputation. You've probably heard of the safety cop, or that person that's always trying to always tell everybody, no, you can't do that. But my philosophy is that we're all trying to get to yes. So yes to the mission, yes to readiness, yes to protecting people, yes to doing what's right. So my disagreement wasn't about winning an argument. It was about realigning us towards a shared objective. And you got to really elevate your thinking, especially in those tense times when you believe your ego is on the line, or you believe your authority is being challenged. You got to back up and recognize we're all working towards a shared objective. So what I do is I approach it with facts, not friction. I acknowledge the intention behind the proposal, because I believe that leader wants to get to yes too. They want to do the right thing. But I'm always trying to get them say yes, but this is how we can do it in a more safer manner. So I calmly lay out what route I want to take. And you said something critical, because when people start getting angry, their focus starts narrowing. And when your focus starts narrowing, you can't see what's on the periphery. What I have to do is I have to calm down so I can see the bigger picture. I can keep the bigger picture. What is the bigger picture in this moment? And so I calmly lay out what route I want to take, or what I believe is the best route for us to take to further our success. So by staying focused on outcomes, not personalities, but on outcomes, I preserve relationships. And one of the key things is I follow up after the meeting to affirm that whatever I'm saying, I'm willing to support 100%. Even if I'm telling you something that you can't do, I'm looking for alternative ways for you so that you can get to that yes. It may not be the way that you thought about it. So with my years of experience, I want to bring other options to you, because sometimes it's just a lack of those parameters, knowing what else can I do, because sometimes you're just limited in your scope. And so over time, I built that credibility rather than, costing it. So getting to yes as your internal compass, it becomes easier to get people to agree without being decisive and divisive. And that's what you're looking for. So getting to yes in your mind is saying, I'm not trying to cause conflict here. I'm trying to get to your objective. These are the ways that we can get to our objective. Is there a place where we can compromise? Is there a place where we can see, maybe we don't see eye to eye on every point, but is there a place where we can start building towards consensus? And so in doing that and respecting other people's differences and respecting that everybody comes with a certain amount of knowledge in the room. I'm not the smartest person in the room, but looking at all the perspectives gives us more opportunities to have different approaches and to gain consensus. So that's what I do. And because that is just a part of my job, is to get people to comply. Sometimes when they don't want to comply, giving them lots and lots of options and lots of ways to get to yes is how I overcome that.
Ooh, that is serious right there. I have been sitting here taking notes myself. So what comes to me right now is I'm excited to hear from you in terms of what practical strategies help you to stay calm and clear and confident when you know that your perspective won't be popular. Please share. I got my pen and my paper. I'm ready.
Well, one of the things I like, because now I'm older, is I use mnemonic devices. And so within the word resilient, there is some gems to extract. So let's just take the word resilient. So if you can't remember anything else, we're talking about being resilient. And so I just want to share with your audience how this works for me. And in my office, I have different sayings and different things written down on my computer, on my whiteboard. I keep these things in front of me so that when I am challenged, I can refer back to. So let's talk about resilience. That R means resist the impulse. So I work very deliberately in my processes. I deliberately pause, especially when I know that I'm going into a situation where the likelihood is that my opinion is not going to be popular. I resist that R, the impulse to jump in and start talking right away. And so sometimes that resistance, I have to have a physical reminder, Dawn, slow down. And so what I'll do is I'll bite down on my lip. It's a physical, just a little bit of pain to make my brain say, slow down. Sometimes I will pinch my fingers just behind my back, nothing that anybody can see, because I know that when I'm triggered, that fight or flight mechanism will start, going into hyperdrive. So that R in the word resilient means resist the impulse to respond and remain resistant to that impulse before I react. So I take a quick pause. I start, I'll bite down, and that causes me to focus not on just myself and my breathing, but it causes me to stop and listen to what the person is saying. I recognize the triggers that I have, and your triggers. Like, let somebody talk to you in a tone that you think is disrespectful, and you'll be triggered. Let someone say inflammatory words or dismiss you or use a gesture, and you're going to get triggered. So you have to posture yourself with that R, resist the impulse. That E means evaluate the moment. What's really happening? Why am I getting so emotional? Why am I getting so upset? What is the bigger picture? What's the broader perspective? So I have to evaluate what is happening beyond what I see. And then I have to see what's at stake beyond my emotional response. Do I want to jeopardize this relationship by acting out? Absolutely not. I don't want to lose the credibility that I've spent so many years building. I don't want to lose my position by just saying something quick and flippant. I don't want to lose respect. So I have to evaluate the moment and think about what's really going on. And then you said it. The S is seek clarity. Clarify your objective. What's the end goal? Not just for me, but for that team, for our team, for the mission, for the situation. What's the end goal? What are we trying to do? I don't want to lose sight of why we're there. So that S is to seek clarity. That I is to invite wisdom. Invite wisdom. And I pray, and some people might seek out the advice of somebody else, but me, I go to God first. And because prayer is so powerful in that I don't have to speak words to pray, I can pray in the middle of a meeting. I can ask God and seek his guidance right there. So I take time to be intentional. Before I go into a meeting, I'm very thoughtful. I reflect, I pray. Sometimes I seek counsel from leaders or from mentors or even my team before I move forward. And I try solely not to rely on my emotional response. You know, some people say I go with my gut. I don't always think that my gut is right, because sometimes I had pizza that day and my gut could be very wrong. So there are 2 key proverbs that help me to invite wisdom that I rest in and I rehearse probably 4 or 5 times, you know, when I'm talking to people. And the first one is Proverbs 11:14, which states, where there is no counsel, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. So a lot of times I'm not the smartest person in the room. So I invite, that I is inviting wisdom. And then Proverbs 24:6 says, for by the wise guidance you can wage war, and in the abundance of counselors there's victory. So getting consensus, getting people together, different opinions, different perspectives, invite wisdom into the situation. And then you said it earlier, lead with intention. Choose your words and your actions that align with your values. You speak in that way. I don't care if somebody is getting slick and greasy with me and talking crazy. I am not moved by what someone external is doing. I'm going to stay in my character. I'm going to stay. I don't use profanity, but I have people cursing at me all the time. That doesn't mean I get back with them. I stay and I lead with intention. And that I is probably the linchpin. That other I is integrate feedback. Stay teachable, even in conflict. Maintaining a teachable spirit is protection from pride. It's protection from stubbornness. It's protection from resistance. Because a lot of times people's idea is that you're not valuing what they're bringing to the table. So if you stay teachable and humble, you'll learn from what's being said, but you'll also learn from what's not being said. And you'll learn from not just how something is said, but you'll learn from what someone doesn't say. And so if you can stay in that space, then and integrate that feedback, you'll begin to hear more because you're listening more. You're not quickly talking, you're listening. And then that E is exercise control. Exercise control, maintain your self-discipline, your tone, and your presence. I come into the room as a person of faith. I don't change that just because the room around me, like you said before, is getting chaotic. That is just who I am. And I believe that we're atmosphere changers. So Proverbs, once again, Proverbs 25 and 28 says, a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. So lack of self-control leaves you completely vulnerable and unprotected. And when that happens, anybody can come in and rile you. So exercise self-control. That N is name the bigger picture. In my mind, that is the linchpin, along with integrate feedback. Name the bigger picture. Don't lose sight of the long-term goal. What are you ultimately trying to build, and what are you ultimately trying to protect? I'm going to fight another day. I'm not going to win in every battle, but I want to make sure that when I'm in the fight, that I fight well. And so when I come back again, I understand that I built my credibility. So I keep the bigger picture. So name the bigger picture. What are you looking for? What are you trying to do? Because maybe it won't happen then, but maybe a conversation later will give you that opportunity. And then that T is take strategic action. You respond not to prove your point, because if you're going in there with ego, strength with strength is going to just cause friction. You respond to make a difference. Be measured, be purposeful, but be bold when it's time. And this is a bonus, because I have this tape right on my computer. Everything I think, I don't need to say. Everything I think, I don't need to say. So I ask myself, is it true? Like, is it true? Is what I'm thinking true? Is it going to be beneficial if I say it? Right? And is it going to produce the outcome that I'm looking for? Because if it's not, then I don't need to say it. So a lot of times, especially in this era of social media, and everybody wants to speak their truth, some truth you just need to keep to yourself, because you don't need to say everything you're thinking. So if you use that acronym RESILIENT, you will find that you will be improving your relationships, and you will sustain longer term, more quality relationships, because it's built in to respect other people.
I'm speechless right now. I have never heard anyone take that word resilient and use it in an acronym in this way. And I absolutely 1000%, when this is over, am going to go back. And I really have to take notes. I mean, each letter was powerful and so relevant and real and true. I thought about previous experiences, but I also said to myself, man, when we fortify ourselves with wisdom, with knowledge, with goodness, with authenticity, it gives us that fuel, right? That fuel that we need to be courageous in an authentic manner. Fuel. I believe you have another illustration for us that deals with fuel.
Yeah, because I think that what we talked about earlier is so important. We talked about burning bridges, and this is what we risk as leaders, especially emergency leaders. I've seen this happen time and time again, because my safety community is very small. When you work for someone today, you're working for them today. You could be working with them tomorrow, or working for them tomorrow. And so we can't afford, I believe that there's strength in developing these relationships. And one of the things that I try to do is increase my network. And so we cannot afford to burn bridges, but we also can't afford to compromise our values. And so I want to give you a quick illustration. I use this, like I said, I teach a lot, and I use a lot of things from my background in safety. And so a lot of times people do not understand that what it takes to burn something, what causes fire. So if you think about burning bridges in leadership, that's the kind of fire that usually ignites the same way that fire ignites in general. You need three things for fire. You need heat, you need fuel, and you need oxygen. You take one of those things away and you will not have a fire. So what is the heat? The heat is the emotional charge. The temperature is rising in the room. Frustration, pride, stubbornness, ego, disrespect. Whatever emotional charge, heat is rising in the room, and it's raising the temperature. So strength is hitting strength, attitudes, and people think that anger is always outward, but you said it before. Some people are angry and it's simmering on the inside, and you don't always see it. So the quiet person, you think is cool, and really they are seething mad. And so that heat that's building up, that's the first component to cause a fire. But heat by itself is not going to cause a fire. You need some fuel. And what's the fuel? The fuel is the issue at hand. It's the disagreement, the decision, the difference of opinion. It's whatever situation, circumstance, or relationship that is causing the conflict, right? So we got the heat, that's the emotional charge. We got the fuel, that's the issue. And then you need that last thing. And if these three things are present, that thing is going to burn, right? You need oxygen, and oxygen is the environment. It could be where you're at. You could be in the middle of a conference room. You could have a whole group of, junior sailors listening to your conversation. You could be on the phone in your cubicle and everybody around you is hearing you talk. You could be on the ship. You could be anywhere physically, but you could also be in a mental place. That environment can be mental, or it can be an emotion place. Any place where there's poor communication, unchecked assumptions, and erosion of trust, compromise, or a crossroad. When those three things show up and they remain unchecked, there will be a fire and you have a potential to burn a bridge. But what I found in using that analogy is that wise leaders know how to remove one of those elements, right? You got to remove one of those elements. Like I said, you need all three. And if you remove just one, you might be able to prevent burning that bridge. So maybe you diffuse heat by what we talked about before, using that resilient acronym and pausing before you respond. Maybe you remove the fuel by reframing the issue, asking questions instead of making accusations, saying, what I understand or what I hear you saying is this. I want to make sure that I'm clear that that's what you're trying to say, and then giving that person time to respond. Now you're bringing down the temperature in the room. Now you're removing the fuel now. Or maybe you cut off the oxygen by saying, hey, this is starting to get a little intense. Maybe we should take this, someplace else where we can talk privately. And just really sit down. Maybe we should just go for a cup of coffee and just kind of talk this out and not have a public showdown. So what you're really looking for is just to remove one of those elements, because if you can, then you won't burn it down. You won't burn that bridge. And just like fire prevention happens, controlling the conditions is key. And not every disagreement has to become destructive. And just like not all fires result in burning down the whole entire building. Not every hard truth has to set the whole room ablaze. But when you allow these three igniters to go unchecked, to simmer, to smolder. Have you ever looked into the fireplace and the flame is there, but underneath that, all the wood is red? Right? Because that's going to keep that thing burning. So without any type of extinguishing, without removing one of those elements, the potential for disaster is greater. Now, having said that, though, some bridges need to be burned. Some stuff, you just need that door to close, especially when that bridge brings extremely negative consequences like, serious ethical compromise or unethical legal behavior. Sometimes you better burn that bridge. And in those cases, we use another, you've probably seen it. We do controlled burns. We deliberately set the fire, but we keep it under control to burn out that thing that we don't want there. So sometimes you got to burn out gossip. Sometimes you got to burn out, those negative emotions. Sometimes you got to burn that stuff out. So a controlled burn is actually a good thing, because after the thing that you don't need, those weeds, those other elements that are there, it improves the overall health of whatever you're trying to do. So sometimes you got to burn out your pride. Sometimes you got to burn out your ego. Sometimes you got to burn out those experiences that you had in the past. What happened yesterday? You got to have a short memory. You got to burn that thing down. So if you don't want to burn bridges, like I said, remember that fire triangle: heat, fuel, and oxygen. Remove one of those things and you can't have a flame. So if you can remember that, you can have more productive and fruitful conversations. But sometimes you got to do a control burn. Sometimes fire is not always bad. Sometimes you got to get rid of those toxic traits, those toxic, tendencies that keep creating conflict for you. So, yeah.
This is powerful. Powerful. And to our listeners and our viewers, right, you have at least two really powerful best practices that you can utilize starting today. She talked about the acronym for resilient. If you missed any of the letters, I'm not going to tell you. I want to invite you to go ahead and press the replay, watch on the replay, listen on the replay. And as a matter of fact, don't keep this to yourself. Invite another coworker, invite another leader that you know may be struggling with holding their ground right now, and have a fruitful discussion so that we can continue to build our community of leaders. One thing that I thought about, another thing I thought about while you were talking was this fact. Our job as leaders is not to be universally accepted. It is to be unmistakably aligned with your values, aligned with understanding who you are, aligned with understanding your purpose, aligned with the mission of the organization. You are to be in alignment, but not universally accepted. Because courageous clarity does not require you and I to be aggressive to tell people who we are. Courageous clarity requires that we be rooted in truth more than our need for approval. So I can walk into a room and remind myself, and I invite you to remind yourself of this to all of our listeners. You're not here to prove anything. You are here to serve with integrity. Oh, what a difference it makes when our focus is serving with integrity, with honesty, with truth, as opposed to walking in to prove that we're the smartest one in the room. So, Dawn, as we end this powerful podcast, I want to ask you one final question. How can we teach emerging leaders to advocate for truth and values without burning bridges or closing doors?
So really, like I said, using all the tools that we talked about before is powerful. But first you have to figure out, who am I? Like, who am I when I show up? What work have I done on myself to stand? What are my values? What are my non-negotiables? What is it that makes me want to be representative of this organization or this particular stance or this particular thing? Like I said, we don't want to create a situation where we burn bridges. So we use that fire triangle to make sure that we are cognizant of the potential that those triggering things have. But what I would tell emerging leaders is to work on you, because sometimes the conflict is not exterior, the conflict is in the interior. It's not external, it's internal. You are walking in conflict, and therefore you're walking into a situation where you're already roiling on the inside. You already feel disrespected. You already feel like someone is not valuing you. So you already have a protective posture, which closes off your ability to hear and to really listen and discern what's happening. So I would recommend to emerging leaders, most of us who have been in the military, we've taken numerous classes on things like emotional intelligence. We've taken numerous classes on leadership principles, and we've increased our libraries and filled our libraries with books by great and overnight. And just because you join the Navy or you join, organization at 22 or 23 doesn't mean you step in with all the coping tools and all the mechanisms that you need to become a great leader. But you have to watch people, identify people. I have a mentor. I have a mentor, and when things get really difficult for me, I get on the phone with my mentor and I say, hey, look, here's my situation, and I don't know how to handle this, or this is how I handled it. And because my mentor is a man and he's nothing like me, my mentor is the director of the Southeast District of Dodia. I'm going to give him a shout out because he's one of the greatest men I've ever met. His name is Mr. Greg Bull. And Mr. Bull has been my mentor for years. Every career move that I've made since I left Odia, when I worked there a couple of years ago, I've ran by him. And I've had times where he's in Georgia, I'm in Italy. I need some guidance. Give me some feedback. How do I deal with this situation? And because Mr. Bull is Mr. Bull, he normally tells me, Don, you're not looking at it in a broader perspective. You're not looking at the big picture. I'm normally wrong. And then he just gives me some truth. And with humility, I take what he's saying. I meditate on it. I take it before the Lord in prayer. For me, I take it before the Lord in prayer, and then I ask God, how can I do it? Do you know, let me just share something real quick with you. I was in a situation where I was really disappointed in my leadership, really disappointed in some decisions that they made. And I was feeling myself. I'm just being 100% transparent. I was holding a decision that I needed to make hostage in order to manipulate them to do what I wanted them to do. Essentially, if I'm just being honest, that's what I was doing. And I felt like I was justified. I went back to God in prayer, and God said, that's not how we do that. You need to go apologize to your leadership and tell them that you did not honor them. And I said, that can't be the Lord speaking to me, because that is never going to happen. I'm never going to do that. And I couldn't sleep and I couldn't rest. And I had to do it. I had to stand in the truth of my character. I am representing Christ on my job. And whatever you're representing, whether you're representing your family or you're representing your whatever it is, your ethnic group, whatever it is that you're representing, represent well. And I represent Christ on my job. So when I do and enact behaviors that are not representative of him, I have to do what the Bible says to do. I have to ask forgiveness, even if it makes me look bad, even if it makes me look small, even if it makes me look like, I'm not, that rah-rah person that people come to know me as. I have to humble myself. And in humbling myself and making myself low, guess what? God elevates me. He brings me up. And so I have a mentor that's a human being. I have a mentor that's in heaven above. And I have a bunch of friends and people who help me. And I have a library full of books that I can glean from. I listen to podcasts like yours. I listen to people who I know who are successful and where I want to go. So young leaders need to do what, create this community. And this podcast, what you're doing, is going to help young leaders develop the skill sets that they need. And they're done that, got the t-shirt, got the cup, got the, the monograph, POW, the whole shenanigans, the whole 9 yards. You got to listen to people who've already been there on the road that you're trying to go. They help you avoid the pitfalls for sure, but they also don't keep you from beating out your own path either. So right. That's what I would say.
I love this. This has been such an amazing conversation, right? And I mean that in all true sense of authenticity, because not only did you share from your own experience, you also gave valuable tools, resources that people can use right now. So again, to our listeners, I want to invite you to make sure you go back and watch the replay. Dawn, if there are individuals who would like to respond to what you shared today personally to you, or they want to share a reflection, or they want to be able to get some of the resources. Remember, she has written multiple books. She has a podcast. And she is an active leader right now. And so if somebody wants to engage or keep in contact with you or get some of your resources, what's the best?
Well, you can always email me. My email address is rejavanation@gmail.com. That's REJAVANATION @gmail.com. My podcast is called the Radiant Love Podcast. And basically, it is not me having conversation, because that's part of the ministry that I have. So I pick one of my books and I read it a chapter a week. for free. So if you don't want to download the book, you can just listen to the podcast. And then I have other podcasts within the broader spectrum of the podcast where I'm just actually teaching biblical truth. So I have different playlists, gems from the word, building your spiritual ladder. So all of those things are available on YouTube at rejuvenation.com. And then if you do want to buy one of my books, I have books, and what to do is go to the Kindle bookstore and type in my full name, Don J as in Juliet Douglas, Don J. Douglas, because there's another Don Douglas that writes these trashy romance novels. That's not me. Yeah, so Don J. Douglas, and my latest book is Dominion Restored, and that is our authority in Jesus Christ. But I have 30-day devotions that I write because I'm more a devotional writer that can encourage you, and that you can consume the word each day to build your relationship with Jesus, if that's where you're at. So certainly those are the ways that you can get in contact with me. And if you're in Italy,
go ahead, please.
Come find me. If you're in Italy, come find me. No, don't come find me. No, I'm kidding.
Oh man. Well, listen, Don, I want to thank you for being our first guest for the Best in Class series. This really was a masterclass.
Oh, wow.
And so I can't thank you enough for joining us. And I look forward to having you as a guest in our Transformation Station podcast community series in the future. We would love to have you back again. Thank you so much.
They got to request me to come back. So if you want me to come back, you have to request me. That means you're going to have to share, like, subscribe, and request me to come back. And this has been such an honor for me. And I'm just praying that people will be blessed by our conversation, but more than that, that people will be transformed, and we will have better leaders.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again soon. All right. Well, listen, this conversation was so rich and so real. And if this conversation reminded you that you don't have to choose between truth and tact, then right now, just take a breath and receive it. Receive the fact that you can lead with both clarity and compassion. You can speak up without burning out. And yes, you can hold your ground without burning bridges, the bridges that you just may need to walk across again. Because resilient leadership, it's not just about standing firm. It's about standing true in ways that others can follow. And if this Best in Class series episode spoke to you right now, I want you to share it with a leader who's navigating hard conversations just like you. Tag us at Transformation Station Podcast and let us know what helps you to speak truth with grace and to lead without losing yourself. I look forward to hearing from you. And finally, remember, courage doesn't always have to sound loud. Sometimes it sounds like a clear voice in a crowded room. So until next time, stay grounded, stay resilient, and keep on leading. See you soon.